All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us once again on Exit Your Way Live. Today with me, I've got Joel Lalgee. Joel, welcome.
Damon, I'm so happy that you said my last name right. That rarely happens, so I really appreciate that. It's great to be here.
I'm a fellow Midwesterner, if you didn't know. Grew up in South Dakota, so I understand.
Nice. I love that. And it all makes sense then.
Yes. So when my wife is watching Fargo on, what is it, Hulu or whatever that series is on, I know the places she's talking about. I've been to Bemidji.
That's awesome, man.
But you're in Milwaukee. That's you're a bit farther east, but so
yeah, I was gonna say one of my friends' wives is from Bemidji. They have a school right up there, right? Or that's where she went. So
yeah,
it's a small world up here.
Oh, it is, man. It is. Well, it's great to have you on.
Great to be here.
People that don't know about what you do, I mean, you started a company this year, Headhunter Media, helping recruiters. We'll talk about that in a bit. But you're one of the people that I see on LinkedIn, and what we're going to talk about is authentic engagement. We got Joseph Stefke in the house.
Hey, Joseph, good to see you.
And that's what I really have been attracted to, and seeing with you, not only through your posts, but in some of the video and stuff you're doing with people. But kind of explain to me a little bit, or everyone listening, I guess, what kind of brought you to LinkedIn, and what really triggered you starting to get involved, and then working into the engagement that you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd been on LinkedIn probably like most people for the past 10 years plus. So I joined the platform 2011. I had a mentor of mine who was really big into the recruitment space. He said, you've got to get on this platform. It's a good place to connect with recruiters. It's how you're going to get seen. There's some business content on here. It's just a good place for you to be. And that was back in a classic LinkedIn, where it was like, I remember the most notable thing was every time I go through the news feed, there'd be like pictures of fruit, and it'd be like 4 lemons plus 1 orange equals a banana. And then it would have like these equations down it. For some reason, that really sticks out to me. But anyway, I was on the platform, and then I got out of recruitment, I got out of college, and I went into like the retail banking zone, did mortgages, just helped retail banking clients. I did that for about 5 years. And then I had an opportunity with the same mentor. He had started a recruitment firm. He said, you got to come work for me. I'm started this firm. We're going to really disrupt the recruitment agency world. You should come and work for me. I said, yeah, that sounds awesome. So I started working as a recruiter. And, when I first joined LinkedIn, I probably grew, I think I grew my connections to about 3,000, just kind of randomly adding people, because I thought, okay, this is a good way to get around it. And then when I started getting into recruitment, LinkedIn was the place that I would source candidates, and it was also a great way for me to connect with people. And if you use the recruitment software package that LinkedIn has, you've got to pay to send somebody an in-mail, which is why you should always just press ignore, so you can refund that recruiter back their money. But I found that you could save money if you just connected with people and you sent them a message. So I grew my connections to, over about 5 years, I grew my connections to about 12,000 people. But I noticed, like, anytime I post a job opening, anytime I'd post just random content, I was like, man, I got 12,000 connections, 12,000 followers, whatever you want to call them. Like, how come I don't get anybody respond?
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'd see like the news feed, and I was like, man, there's people doing video, there's stuff going on, there's people getting hundreds of likes, thousands of likes, and just got really curious with it, but never really did anything. And then September, so right around Labor Day of 2019, I ended up commenting on somebody's post, and kind of just posted. They had posted their comeback story, and I just decided, hey, I'm going to post my comeback story, which involves some like mental health and all this sort of stuff. And that person, I just happened to be the first comment on this person's post, I think so. I ended up getting like 80 likes and got 10 messages or 10 comments from just that comment that I made. And I got 2 people message me and just said, your story really impacted me. And prior to that, I'd actually gotten off all of the social media. So I was only using LinkedIn for recruitment purposes. But suddenly in that moment, I was like, wow, like I can actually make an impact with people with just a comment. What would happen if I started making, videos? So I did. I put out a video. It was a 5-minute long video with no subtitles. And I shared my story about how I got an internship using LinkedIn, the platform LinkedIn. And I tagged everybody I knew. I tagged like 3 people I knew who were like influencers, and I must tag 20 people. And it got a good response. And I was like, this is it. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm a LinkedIn video superstar. And so I was like, I'm going to post every single day. And so, I posted again the next day, and, got 0 engagement on it. And so that happened for about 3 to 4 months. I just would get really low engagement. And then I started taking a lot more conversations offline and really connecting with people. And that's really where I saw a big increase in engagement. As I really started to get to know people, obviously it makes sense. As you get to know people, you just engage with them more. And that's really where my engagements journey really started. And haven't looked back since then. Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit earlier, because you have an interesting history. I mean, you were not born in the U.S., but you moved here young. And kind of explain that a little bit. That's pretty cool.
Yes, I was born in the UK. So I was born in England. So one of my uncles married a woman from Wisconsin, and him and my dad were really close, and they were in business together. And so when my uncle moved over to the States and moved over because he got married, about 5 years later, my dad decided, we're gonna move the family over to the United States as well. And so I was 12 years old at the time, so just entering high school. And obviously, when you have a big shift and you move country, I mean, it's a big deal. There was a lot of things that were culture shocks. Like even though you speak English, both places speak English. It was a big culture shock. And then you're heading into high school, and there's all these trends. So. But I've moved back and forth from England a couple of times. So I moved back to England when I was 18, and then since being in the States, I've lived in Southern California. I spent some time in Colorado, and then just really try to travel as much as I can as well. But I think that actually helped a lot with the recruitment industry, because when you're having conversations with people, it's great to be able to connect with them on different levels. And I think just moving, the act of moving as like a younger child or a teenager, whatever you want to call it, it forces you to make new friends. It forces you to try and connect with people. And so, it was like really hard in a moment. And I think it was definitely a challenge, and it ripped me away from everything I was familiar with. But in the long run, I really see that as a big reason that I'm able just to connect with people who are different than me. And that's really served me well in a lot of the industries that I've worked in.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think you're right. That as hard as it is, that act of having to relearn some things, make a new friend group, do those kind of things, and it really does makes you more comfortable doing it the next time.
For sure. Yeah, and it's I think the hardest thing for me was, like, I was a really big soccer fan. Football, we call it in England. And I got over here, and so that was something that was really big, because back then, I mean, that was 18 years ago. I mean, soccer is really popular now. It's on TV a lot more, which I'm happy about. But back then, it was like, really, like, why are you playing that? And then I had just issues with, like, I had, even just having the English accent, like, people couldn't understand me. And so a lot of people are like, well, you don't sound like you're from England. And a big reason of that is because I didn't want to live my life, especially when you're 12 years old, like, you don't want to be different. You want to fit in. So I remember coming home, and you know, I remember the first time I told my dad, or we had a conversation, I'm like, "What's up?" And he's like, "What does that mean?" And then I was like, "Hey, man." And he's like, "Why are you calling me man?" Like, because you don't say that stuff in England. So definitely a culture shock for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet. Yeah. And at that time, like you said, soccer was, on the Ocho at 11 o'clock at night.
Exactly.
You didn't.
There was one show, I think it was on Fox Sports, at least the league I watched, right? And they would like randomly show it, and I'd have to wait. It was like once a month, and it would be at like 9 p.m. And if I missed it, or if they just decided not to show it, I didn't have any other way to watch it. There's no YouTube. There's no streaming, and I'm glad the internet came into play with that one.
Yeah, no doubt on that. So then you moved from the UK. So you go from the UK where, they have winters and stuff, and you moved into Wisconsin of all places.
I know, man. Tell me about it. Yeah, we moved, it would have been a year. So it was 1999. And I think 1999 was one of the worst like snowstorms. And we moved in January too. So it was like, we got picked up from O'Hare. And I remember just looking around, just thinking, why are we moving here? And then it was like new schools and everything as well. Oh, yeah. And I got into the school system, and but then it quickly, like, the summer came and I forgot about the winter. I was like, this is the greatest place ever. Like, everything's bigger. Just, England's really small. Like, I don't think people necessarily always think about that, but like, houses are tiny and it's really expensive, and there's a lot of people in a really small space. Yeah. And then you move to somewhere like Wisconsin, it was like, it's amazing. The roads are huge.
Yeah. You got, there's nothing comparatively, and there's plenty of room to do what you want. And
I love that.
And you have the lovely cheeses that they have in Wisconsin. And I don't mean that jokingly, because they know what the hell they're doing there.
You know what, though? I will have to counter that with, like, I am a really big fan of like English and European cheese. So even though I'm in the cheese capital of the US, there's certain types of cheeses which I just think some of the European cheese is spot on. But it's not bad here either. I shouldn't bash it too much.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So you were doing the recruiting, and that was going well enough or whatever. But what really prompted you to start Headhunter Media, and first of all, explain a little bit what Headhunter does, and then kind of back into what prompted you to start that.
No, absolutely. So the goal of Headhunter Media is to work with recruitment agency owners or independent recruiters and really help them produce primarily LinkedIn content. But I also have helped people with website copy. I've helped people with, some just like one pager kind of selling documents, and really help them understand, number one, they have a voice, they've got a story, they've got some value that they can bring, but how to do that with a platform like LinkedIn, and how everything from like how the algorithm, which everybody talks about, but like kind of how an algorithm works in terms of being consistent, but then also understanding that simple concept, like it doesn't really matter how many views you get like in a day. It's about how many views you get over an extended period of time. And then also looking that, great, you might get some engagement, but it's not about how much engagement you're getting. It's about getting the right engagement. And as you get that engagement, how to turn that into a real relationship that's either a candidate or a client for most of my the clients I work with, or just overall awareness. And so you're not having to say to your network that you built over the last 5 years, maybe you got clients in there, you've got candidates you haven't spoken to. Instead of sending out a blast newsletter that says, hey, how you been? Like that, and it's maybe awkward, maybe you haven't talked to them for a while. Be top of mind by putting out regular content. And, most people, if you've built in a strategic way, which most recruitment owners have, they've connected with a lot of their target market, they're heavily niched, and they're very connected. the idea of the content, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It's just staying top of mind. And what you start to find is that, maybe you only get 1,000 views, but if 300 of those views, even if it's just your name and they see your picture and that triggers a positive reaction, they're probably going to reach back out to you and say, hey, funnily, I saw one of your posts on LinkedIn, made me think of you. What, we have this search. Can you help us? So it's just really training people into that mindset and really trying to get away from, I think, the idea of social media that number one, like you got to be some sort of viral, you've got to like influence, or it's got to be something more than it is. It's really just you being consistent, putting out interesting stories, putting out a piece of who you are, and then tying it back to business. And so it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I get to work with everybody from independent recruiters to small recruitment owners, and it's been a really exciting journey so far. And I think about 3.5 months into it. So obviously early days. Yeah.
Well, that's, I mean, the way you've built it, I think that you're going to continue to be able to help those people because as we were talking before we got on, this year has really been a game changer for people that had been adopting digital, means, social media, LinkedIn, been active on it prior, because we came into the year ready to go.
Yeah, exactly.
And when the user base just jumped like that, I think it was a real opportunity to help a lot more people and share your message.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, one of the things that I've noticed, particularly within the recruitment industry, it's very sales focused. So there's amazing salespeople, but what we're also seeing is obviously the phone still works, and nobody's doubting that. I'm not here to say cold calling doesn't work. But what I am here, and what I do preach a lot on a lot of the content I put out is, even if you get 500 views, if you get 1,000 views, and it's just your name, they just see your picture, and the people that to make that many phone calls and get connected to them so they just hear you. I mean, you're making a lot of phone calls. And what I found is, it used to be 30, 40 phone calls a day. Could kind of get away with connecting. Now it's probably closer to 100 to 150 cold calls a day. And that's to reach the same amount of people you could with the 30 phone calls. But obviously it's a tiring exercise. It's a lot of voicemails. It's a lot of people hanging up. And then suddenly you get somebody live and it's like, okay, it's on. And even if you are skilled at cold calling, that within itself is really challenging. So if you can add other means to market yourself and get brand awareness, so maybe you're getting some inbound calls or you're getting some inbound messages, it's not going to replace, you still have to sell people and all of that. But what I found is within the recruitment space, and this is from going, through multiple training courses in the recruitment industry, there's zero training on how to market yourself, even though the work that you do is primarily like you're building up your own reputation. So even if you work for a firm, typically they'll say, once you leave that firm, the client's going to go to, because they're working with you as a person.
Yeah.
So there's a huge opportunity to just teach individuals, how do you go from being a salesperson to a marketing / salesperson, which I think I think that's the same for a lot of industries, and it's going that way. It just happens that recruitment is a little bit probably further behind than maybe some other industries.
Yeah. And that's true. I mean, you look at people that use recruiters. Even when I was still using recruiters, you call the recruiter that had placed you, that's who you talk to again. And
exactly. Yeah.
And they like to do it too, because they've placed you before. They know what you've done. You get that relationship. I mean, hell, my wife used the same recruiter for her whole career.
Yeah.
And they get almost like a dynasty of clients with them when they, on both sides, as they build that career going through. But you're right. It's got to be very difficult. Someone trying to build that or maintain that or stay top of mind in both on the candidate and the client side.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, I mean, when you look at even kind of people entering in the recruitment world, agency recruitment world, typically if you don't make it past, like, I mean, there's phases. Like a lot of people don't make it past the first year.
Yeah.
Then it's like 3 to 5 years. If you made it past that 5-year mark, you're probably going to be doing well. But even then, I mean, it's competitive, and a lot of people get burned out, and then they go to the corporate side of recruitment. So they go in-house at a company, even though it's less money, it's less stress. But I think for a lot of people who are just starting out in particular, or early on in their career, it's really, really competitive. And a big part of what makes it competitive, it's lucrative. And so what can really set people apart probably earlier on. I think if you've been doing recruitment for 20 years and you have a lot of existing relationships, you should be safe, and you should be able to get referrals, and it's who do you know. But, you know, even in that case, we are seeing these shifts where brand awareness it's just more and more and more important, and particularly for, I think, decision makers who are maybe more in that millennial age group. They're making decisions differently, and I think relationship building is different. And so having that online brand is big. So I've got a number of clients who have, like, they're like, hey, I don't even have a website. Like, all my business is just, it's word of mouth, but I see that I need to actually have the digital presence if I'm going to be able to expand. And I don't want to get, 5 years down the line and maybe some of the client relationships I've had change, or that they move to a different company. I don't want to be left with nothing. So we need to start building this. And luckily, I believe there's plenty of time if you understand the compound effect, and if you understand that it's going to be slow for a while, but if you stick with it, you'll actually gain momentum. I am a big believer in that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you said that, because we just had our Thursday event that we have this morning. We have it every Thursday at 7:30, but we had Josh Curcio from Protocol 80 talking about SEO, inbound stuff that they do for manufacturers. And that is the similar thing, right? It takes a while. It's like a grind. You got to wait, and then it's building. And he had actually had some nice graphs from different manufacturers where their traffic was just like, it just started going, it looked like it was real flat and low, and then all of a sudden it just started going. And then it was like, they're getting 15,000 website hits a month, and then they go into, then this translates into how many leads, in this stuff. Yeah. I think a lot of people, and I've seen you write about it, a lot of people get discouraged because none of this stuff comes fast.
It's like, I think the best thing you can compare it to, honestly, it's like working out and diet. It's like you just simply can't diet for 2 weeks and exercise for 2 weeks and expect to see results. Like you need to shift your thinking. It's got to be a habit. And I think what happens is a lot of people jump into it really fast, and they either invest with money, with like production, or they invest a lot of time. And I think whether it is like online influencers or kind of coaches that maybe are misleading with like the expectations and how long it's going to take. I think people get into it and they invest so much time, and then like 2 weeks later, they haven't got what they want. And so I always tell people, and I tell this with all of my clients, I'm like, I mean, you don't come to me, really realistically, don't like come to me until we're like 3 to 6 months in, and then we can start gauging, because then we've got enough posts, we've got enough data to see even what your audience responds to. What's the type of content? Is it short? Is it long? Is it videos? But 3 months, it's the same with SEO. It's the same with, I think it's the same with most marketing, but it's just our culture, right? I mean, it's just a culture where we just want things, everybody wants things done super quickly. And, but I think I found it myself. I didn't get any traction. I just loved doing it, which is why I kept doing it. But once, like you said, once you start, even with like followers, like I think people think, oh my gosh, how did that person get to like 1 million followers? And it's like, it's actually probably harder to get to 1,000 followers than it is to get to 1 million. Because once you get up to like 50,000, then it's like it just starts to go like that. So maybe 1,000 is not the right, but once you've got that initial following, it's easier to build. But it's a grind, man. You got to figure it out. You got to see what works for you as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're like me, I mean, I look at how many views and reactions and stuff I get. I mean, I track it too, but really,
what do you use to track it out of curiosity?
I do it manually yet. I'm old school, man. I see the apps and stuff. I don't mess with it because honestly, I'm looking for people that like my vibe, that want to do, that think that I'd be good doing business with. And I just want that. I want them to be able to meet me through the videos because they can see who I am and stuff like that. And through my posts, because if you read my posts, half the posts during the week, sometimes, I mean, we do some events and so we put that stuff on, but most of the other posts are stuff like, I'll come up, I'll be reading a book or something. I go, oh, that's something I got to write about. I write it down. And that's all it is. That's how much thought I put into my marketing. I just want people to know who I am because what I do takes a real deep level of trust. And yeah, look at my history. Hell, I can do things with businesses that make them work.
Yeah.
But you gotta to do that kind of stuff. I need someone to know and at least appreciate me and understand me a lot about who I am, because we work so closely together that if we clash, this isn't going to work.
Exactly. Well, and I think that's the part that I've come to love with content is for a long time I was trying to like appease everybody, but now it is a lot more. I mean, my content still resonates with a lot of people, but I think it's like, for example, I posted something the other day. It was a picture of me, and it was kind of like making fun of a little bit of like, like the typical thought leader picture with like their face and a quote. My quote was like, if you're not nice online, if you're an influencer online, but offline, you're not, like nice or whatever, like you suck. That was the thing. And I had this guy locally to me who I know I've talked to before. And, he's a little bit of I guess more seasoned, like not necessarily really so sold into like the idea of social media marketing and all this other stuff, but he jumped on there, and then it was like 3 of his buddies jumped on there, and we had a great conversation though, like through the comments, and I was giving it to him. I'm like, yeah, I don't care what you think. Like, I'm not thinking about like the next 5 years. I'm thinking about the next 20 years. Like that's why, we're having these conversations. And then one of the guys adds me today, and it's just like, hey, confidentially, I'm looking for, this position. And I looked at his profile. I'm like, yeah, he's a top candidate. And it just goes to show, it's like, I could have been like, oh my gosh, like these guys, like they're making fun of my sacred thing. But it's like, no, man, I'm on here to connect and have a little bit of banter. Now, on the other hand, I've noticed recently too, people coming on more of my posts because I've been getting more reach, and people who don't know me coming on and just spewing whatever. In that case, I'm a little quicker to just close it down or not respond. But I think it's like the more you are yourself, the great thing is then when you have the conversation with them offline and they're like, oh my gosh, you're the same person, or like you have the same vibe that you do online, it's awesome, because then it's like you don't have to have, it's a different sales process. So I'm 100% with you, but I think we just it's like we see the term influencer, we see the term, we think of social media, and I think there's just like generational paths there, or there's just like different ideas. And even for me, like I didn't grow up like with social media. It came around, 10 years ago. So I was like still in there where I saw people explode with it. But even now, a lot of people are really afraid they're afraid to put like real stuff out there, and but not knowing that like there's a lot of business out there, and you don't want to be chasing after all of it. Like you can use your content to like cut that small piece out of the pie, that small group of people that, like you said, you're going to vibe with. You're going to have a great experience. You're going to help them make money. You're going to help them grow their business. They're going to love working with you. Then they're a great referral, and they go, hey, you know what? You'd be great working with them. That's what it's about. Yeah. And it's more fun if it's that way. And I think somehow it's got crossed into this like weird activity that you've got to tick the box off, go, oh, I've done my marketing piece, instead of doing what you do, which is I'm inspired. Like that caught my eye. Maybe the person that I want to reach, maybe they'd be inspired too by it. So I'll put that out. And then the 3 people who are inspired by it respond and go, hey, I was thinking that same thing today. We should have that conversation offline sometime, whatever, however that looks. And then next thing you know, profitable relationship in business. It's not as complicated as I think we try and make it sometimes.
Well, and you bring up a good point, and I'll get to Matt Perkins had a couple questions here, but you make a great point is and something that I started doing more of last fall with and Nick Dorsey helped me out with this, is taking it offline, right? It's an online place to engage and talk to people, but your real relationships are still when you get on Zoom calls, sit down, having a beer, or whatever it is. That's where it's still the same in that respect.
And 100%. And I think like, it's so funny because like when it came to like networking events, like the after work networking events or like the best places to work events. So whatever those events were, I used to go to that all the time. And I was kind of like uncomfortable in those positions because I'm not that great at small talk. I'm not that great at I'm just not that great in that particular situation. But I think I started viewing LinkedIn as like literally it's a way for me just to make a quick connection and then take things offline as quickly as possible. And what I found is I could connect, me and you, we could dialogue for years online, through text. We could, I could go on your posts, we could comment on other stuff for years. But that 20 to 30 minute conversation is worth like 100 years of engagement. And the quicker you can do that, the quicker you find the people that you connect with equally. Maybe you take the conversation offline. And you're like, all right, well, they don't really align with me. And it doesn't mean then you're like, oh, I hate that person. But then also like you get better and it stretches you. You get to meet different people, and you get to learn how to relate to different types of people. And I think it's a skill that more and more in the future, particularly now, but I think it's just going to be more and more of a future thing. Like, how do we take our engagement online and turn it into something that's real? And I can tell you, I said this in a podcast recently. I mean, it's been probably 3 conversations offline or in some sort of fashion like this for the last year. And I mean, that's some of those are weekends as well. So if you add that up, you're talking like 800, 900, 1,000 conversations. And I'll say it every day. Like, that's why when I make a post or I put a post out there, that's why, 50, 100 people show up. It's not like my content's necessarily that magnetic.
Yeah.
It's like, I just know that many people. And the same when I see someone's post that I know, I'm more likely to engage with it because I care about them as a person and I know the person. And it's huge. And it's something which like, sometimes I talk to people and they're having a real issue with engagement. And it's like, well, when's the last time you talked to anybody even on the platform that you connected with? I'm like, I never have. And it's like, well, or they don't say I never have. They're just like, oh, I don't, what do you mean? And you get into it and you're like, well, find those relationships, so I love that you're doing that. And I think it's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to, I mean, like you said, you're doing more than I do, but I've got probably 10 a week. I don't even count them anymore.
That's huge. I mean, that's a lot as well.
You just start to go and because it's so easy anymore. If you got Calendly or something like that, let them schedule a time that works for them. Talk, you do the Zoom, do the Teams, whatever you're doing, and spend the half hour doing it because you never know.
Yeah. And we were talking about before. It's like, oh man, like imagine trying to, 20 years ago, you want to meet with someone from wherever, LA, and you're in Boston and you're like, okay, I want to meet this person. You got to call him, you got to cold call him, you got to do all that sort of stuff. Okay. You could still call him here, but now it's like you can connect online. Oh, great. We don't connect. Oh, you connected. All right. We have a quick phone call. And then now you can just, it used to be you get the phone call, then you got to buy a plane ticket. You got to do all this sort of stuff. Now it's like, hey, why don't we have a Zoom call? And we're face to face. Obviously it's not the same, but hey, it's about 60, 70%. You don't get the I guess the energy. But to be honest, like I think if you get comfortable in front of camera and you get comfortable and you do podcasts, you do Zoom meetings, you do live streams, you get pretty decent in front of camera to where you can connect with people.
Yes.
Say, it's easy. We could schedule five, both of us, we could talk to people on every continent in the world in a morning without leaving our house. I mean, that when you think about it, it's like mind blowing. And I don't think we really act on that as much as we should, or the people who are, though, are capitalizing on it big time.
Yeah. Well, and for us in our consulting business, what it allowed us to do by going virtual, we started on Teams in like the middle of 2019 or beginning, something like in 2019. And when we rolled into this and the pandemic hit, we already had to go virtual because we were in 2019 because we were doing national and international clients. So you get used to it. Well, even the local clients where we can go to see them now like our virtual stuff better because they're on Teams with us. They can message us and they know the little indicator. If it's green, we're not in a meeting. They know they can message us or video call us at any time. It's like we're working in the same damn office.
Super smart.
So it's crazy stuff when you think about what you can do. And then you look at the value for them, right? Because we had to do that. You had to go fly somewhere or go meet them and sit down. You're going to talk for your time and you're going to go, and then you got to do. Well, now it's like it's an open office, and as long as they respect the boundaries, which they do, it's an awesome way to work.
I was talking to one of my clients today, yesterday, and she's in like the HR consulting space, and sometimes they have like just stuff that comes up with payroll, or they just have kind of emergency situations, and it's just like, yeah, I get messages through Facebook, I get messages on Slack, I get messages, text messages, and it's interesting because there's so many ways to connect with people, and I think it's been despised for a long time, and people are like, oh, this sucks. But when you really think about it, I think it's awesome. Like, I know I shared this a while ago in one of my posts. My dad used to be involved in helping British companies export into the US. Mm-hmm. And so what he'd do is he'd cold call into British companies, British manufacturers, and he'd set up 20 sales meetings and he'd fly over. And seriously, some of the time, like, he'd get to those meetings and people just wouldn't show up. And it's like he flew, because they didn't know that he flew over there. I said, Dad, the other day that we were talking, I'm like, wouldn't it be amazing if you just had the Zoom function then? You could have just Zoomed those guys. Oh, we get along great. I'll meet with you. They're not going to ditch you if you've already had that face-to-face communication. Same token, you could probably knock half the deals out on the line, and maybe you're going over there to sign on the dot type thing. Yeah. And he's like, man, that it would have been it would have saved a ton of plane tickets, and it would have saved a ton of time. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that's the accessibility that we have. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Got Ron here too saying,
yeah, good stuff. Let's see what Matt Perkins, he was talking about. What tips do you have for business with opposite problem? They grow so fast. They start from the start. You have to scale your growth. And get in the process and everything behind. It's funny. He asked that because we were talking about that with one of my e-commerce clients that has that problem now. And it's
they have to turn off their orders.
They actually have to turn off the order spigot. But it's one of those things. I think it's common, and even in a single person business like yours, or even us as we've been growing with and moving to multiple people, it's really common that businesses have to re-engineer what they're doing. I mean, you can't leave it set and this is how we do it, because they just don't scale well. And it's not uncommon for people to have to slow down the growth once in a while just to get things working right on the backside.
And I think there's a lot of, again, like, there's a lot of solutions that are out there that people aren't always aware of too. Like, I just think of like, what's up, Ron? And I just think of like Fiverr. I think of like VAs. Yep. There's a lot of ways that you can outsource a lot of tasks pretty efficiently. And so you can kind of become like even as a solo person, like, you can kind of become almost like a super solo person, because you can have different contractors working under you. Yeah. And kind of taking away some of those tasks. So I think it's just a case of looking at like what your processes are, and but then also getting with someone like yourself who like knows business. Like that was like a big thing for me. It was like I didn't until I went solo. I was like, oh, it should be like a piece of cake, and and then get some clients, and then it was like I've had to be really open to just having conversations with people, and then being like, okay, you should do this, you should do that. Hey, what are you using for this? You should use this. And I think you gotta approach it like that as well, and just be like, get with someone who knows what they're doing. First of all.
Yeah. And Matt's got a couple other questions here, and I know you got to go. I'm looking at the clock at 3 in like a minute. You got to get off.
We're good. We'll go for another 5 minutes here. We're good.
Okay. But yeah, I know this kind of stuff. I know Matt is really, but you go back to Fiverr and be the super person on Fiverr. I mean, I think we've done over 300 gigs on Fiverr this year. I looked the other day and I was like, holy heck, we've done a lot.
That's awesome.
But it allows you to do things, and the technical people and some of the administrative stuff you can do, and you can find really skilled people. I mean, we have some high level financial stuff done once in a while when we need the extra capacity. That's for sure. But but he's afraid. He's afraid to every time we scale on corner. Yeah, sacrificing quality. That's always a challenge.
Man, I think like, oh man, I feel like with that, because I mean that was already the challenge I was having really, really quickly, because it was like, I was getting a lot of inbound leads. I mean, I still get tons of inbound leads because I put out so much content, so it's just inevitably going to happen. But and basically what I'm doing is I'm writing content for people. So I'm meeting with them for an hour a week, and helping them work through that process that you described. Like that comes naturally to you, and it's just easy. For a lot of people, I think for most people, it could come easier, but they overthink it. So it's like working with them and going, okay, what happened this week? Tell me about your week. Tell me about this situation. Tell me about that situation. Coaching them on how to just think. And I'm taking notes the whole time, and then I'm putting together pieces of content based on that. But I tell you what, after, I'm up to like 8 clients after writing, some of them I'm only doing 2 or 3 posts a week. Others I'm doing, 10, 15 posts a week. Plus the 15 that I'm doing for myself.
Yeah.
And, it's like, I'm selling personalized content too. So I'm not like, hey, here's my copy and pasted library I've already done. There you go. Here's access to it. It's like, I'm writing this stuff, and there'll be days where I write for 8 hours. And I'm just like, man, I can't take on any more clients. Even if I'm only doing 2 hours per client, I'm only doing 20 hours. That 20 hours is like, that's a lot of like, thinking about different things, making it hard hitting. And so one of the things that came up was like, well, do I outsource some of that copywriting? And that's what people kept telling me. Like, you got to go on Fiverr, find a copywriter, find this, find that. But I haven't had it in me to like do that, because I haven't wanted to figure out the quality side. But I think that's just like, you got to monitor it, and you've got to do what you can to keep the quality at 80, 90% of what it can be, and just mitigate it. And maybe at certain times you're like, all right, I'm going to step more into it. But I feel like that's like any business. Like, as you scale it, I mean, if you're manufacturing something hand, and then you go to someone else manufacturing it for you, you're going to have a change in quality. You just got to find that right partner and the right person to help you with it.
Well, and you hit it, I think, is if you're a perfectionist or really, really good at things like you do, or if we're skilled at anything, you aren't going to find somebody that's going to do it exactly like you are and as good as you do in your mind, because no one's going to do it the exact same way. I think part of it is accepting the fact that if you get 80 or 90%, if you get 90%, that's freaking awesome, I think. And look at the results. If they're bringing good results and the customers are happy, and they're not doing it, to the extent you would or quite the same way you would, but the customers are happy, they feel like they're getting good value. That's where we have to, as perfectionists and those kind of things, you have to step back and go, it's still working okay. That's the only way to scale. Otherwise, you are trapped in your own mind, and that's as far as you can ever go.
100%. Yeah, I love it. It's a great way to. It's a good problem to have too. I mean, I guess I'd rather have that problem than not being able to have any traction, because I just think like marketing and sales seems to be like the part that most people have a real challenge with. And so I think if your problem is how do I scale, I think that's a lot more of an easier solution to solve than not having any clients, which I think a lot of people are hitting that right now. And that's why we were talking before, which I'm seeing CPAs, lawyers, financial advisors, Bitcoiners. No, Bitcoiners are always around, but those, the financial advisors, CPAs, man, getting so many messages. And I'm just thinking, why am I getting all these? And they're not even good messages. You can just tell like they're just, hitting out 5,000 people. But that should be an indicator of, people like us who have been on LinkedIn for a while and kind of understand content. If you are interested in helping people and consulting them on how to do that, there's a big market for it right now because it's a skill set that it's amplified itself over the last 6 months to like every company's thinking about how do we brand, how do we reach people digitally. So any kind of business like that's exciting. E-commerce, like you were saying, is super exciting as well. And sadly there's obviously different other industries that are taking a hit too right now.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, Matt says that's fair. Just haven't accepted. The leads are still there, then the client's supposed to be satisfied. And I think that's part of what we were talking about there is, in the end, if they're happy, and that's good. And that, but Joel, I'm so happy to be able to sit down and talk with you like this. It's awesome to get your insight and
great connecting
people, man. I just so appreciate it. Love the engagement and the just your authentic nature of how you're going out there after people and telling them like you believe it.
Appreciate it. Well, it's great to be here, and apologies for, I know I had to push this back a couple times, so I'm glad we were able to make it work this year. And it's great to be here. I love being able to connect, and I think this is probably our first conversation too. Like,
it is.
So
it is. It's kind of rare actually, because usually I talk to people a few times before they do this. But awesome to get you here, and we'll have you back.
We have a live segment coming up, right? It's coming up.
No, I don't think so.
Do we not have one, or did you already do that? And did I miss that? I thought we had I thought you were doing like or maybe you haven't announced it.
Oh no, that was the one on Thanksgiving. That was the Flushing 2020. You missed that.
Are you serious? You should have
yeah, dude. We had that's our, hey, it was you guys that got me inspired, because I saw you weren't you on that 24-hour live?
Oh my gosh, man. There was a 24-hour live, and then there was two. I've done two recently. I can tell you, man, those things are, I think you were I only want to do it for 4 hours. And I think 4 hours. Smart. Because I think I got the people I did, they were 12 hours in, and they were
oh yeah.
I think they stepped away, and I just drove it. I was like, okay, well, whatever. But hey, if that ever happens again, you just got to call me or whatever to get a hold of me.
I will.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I can't believe that.
Yeah, no worries, man. Because we're gonna do it again, though. We had a ball. We had I don't know. And then it kind of stinks too, because StreamYard only lets you get 9 or 10 people. So I would be getting the message all the time. People are trying to get in, even though I tried to schedule a course. You got extra people that come in but it was a ball. We had a lot of fun. Next time you're going to be on for sure, and we'll have fun.
Heck yeah, man. Appreciate it. Well, thanks again, man. I appreciate being on here, and it's good chatting with you guys.
You bet. Have a great evening.
All right, you too.